Kamal, welcome to Bangalore Lit Fest. And um, the Pada is a movie that has caught many people's imagination. Let's get start the conversation by asking you the genesis of Pada. I mean, the Pada is a movie made out of a real life story. Um, so, what is the genesis, and how did you, uh, you know, think or come to that story? Because it's a
Thank you, everyone. It's nice to be here, first of all. Uh, the session is also titled as Pada, so I understand the conversation is about the process of a film which is close to certain kind of context, history, recent history. Uh, And when we talk about this particular film, like I would like to share my process also as a filmmaker. When you think about a film, an idea or a script, you have many thoughts regarding the story you are talking about, the context you are setting up with that film, and the innate connection of that particular story to the medium of cinema. And that is very important for a filmmaker to tell a story. Like, till the point we know the cinematic expression comes to a certain kind of idea, whatever idea that occurs behind the story. So, Pada was also like that, a process which made me also look back my upbringing when I was a student. So later, like maybe 25, almost 25 years later, when I wanted to make a film, like I thought about this incident that occurred in 1996. And it was an incident that sounded a certain kind of protest, a protest against a legislation that had happened in 1996, because Kerala government had passed a new law that amends the Adivasi land rights. So within a week, a small group of young people protested against that legislation. And that became a news in the state because of the uniqueness of that protest. So, when I thought about this particular incident to be adapted into a screenplay or a film, the first thing that got attracted to me as an idea was the performative quality of that protest. Because four young men are going with a certain decision to challenge the ideals, the values of that legislation that is being made in the legislative assembly a week before. And they have gun in their hands, they have bombs in their hands, and they terrorize a collectorate office, and they make the district collector a hostage. And when you look back to that incident, when you adapt it into a film 25 years later, so many thoughts that I have to like I don't know, like so many things that I have to integrate in a new context. So that was a long process, and I can't say it in
Yeah,
one breath.
yeah, Kamal. But
And
yeah,
we will discuss like in
yeah. Let me
further
butt in
questions.
and ask, when you make a movie out of a real life story, that there are two dangers. One, either you end up making a documentary, or you make take that liberty to turn it into fiction. So how do you manage this? Where is that fine line? As a director, as a filmmaker, where is that craft comes in? Can you just tell us about that?
Yeah. So when you write a script for a film, like if it is pure fiction, we have so many advantages and freedom as well to take things in our own course. But when you adapt a real life incident, you have to have the resonance of that particular incident or the idea behind that event. So all these things, like we have to adapt in this writing. That's what, like, and it's a big responsibility because the people are still living. The people who took part in that incident are still living. So, like, definitely they are also my audience, part of my audience. So I have to be responsible to primarily to the people who are involved with that incident. And there are people who are standing in different sides of that story. Like there are people who rebels against that like legislation. There are people who protest or support them. There is a system who negotiates with them, and there is a system that like tries to look at it in a judicious way, trying to understand the reason behind the rebellion in a way. So all these things I have to bring in a judicious way, I would say. Like I won't say in a balanced way, but like in a judicious way. That's where like the challenge of writing a script based on real events become very important.
Okay, Kamal's first movie, ID, was made. It was a Hindi movie, and it dealt with a more or less of identity of a person in a large city like Bombay. So, but there is some kind of politics in it, and Pada is obviously there is some kind of a politics and elements of dissent. So as a filmmaker, um, how do you deal with politics of a movie, if at all there is politics, and how do you deal with it, and how do you present it?
I think politics is everywhere. Like we breathe in an atmosphere where like oxygen. It's politics is also there. So like we can't take away the politics of an expression of someone. Like in any art form, in any act of expression. In short. So for me, every expression is political. So every story we tell is political. So my first film, as you mentioned, ID was a pure fiction. Again, a pure fiction that is evoked by a real mention. Like one of my friend mentioned to me one occurrence that she had once a painter one day a painter came to her house to paint a wall and he collapsed and she was alone in her home and she didn't know his name. And when she told me this incident, like I started thinking about a story. What if something happened to that man, and what if she become responsible to find the identity of the man, to hand over this man who fell unconscious and eventually died later in the film. So, so that was, I had the advantage of a fiction there, but at the same time, like when I come to Pada, like I didn't have that kind of freedom, because like I had the real faces are in front of me, so it's like not some kind of fiction or faces that is coming from my imagination.
See, actually, Pada has, I don't know how many of you have seen Pada. Pada has won the accolades for, for its craft, the way the characters portrayed. And let me ask you, uh, in Kerala, the film appreciation has taken a different tangent now. Now people are not commenting on the story. People are commenting in the reviews. They're talking about the making of the film. You know, as a filmmaker, how do you look at it? There's this change of appreciation, review, and all that. You know, as a filmmaker, you're not going to just tell a story, but tell it well. You know, so
Kerala had always kind of liking towards cinema as an expression, as a form of expression art, and it coincided with the social political movements that had happened from 50s onwards strongly. So the art form, cinema as an art form had its own roots from 50s, I would say. And along with the film society movement that spans across all over India, from National Film Archives collection of films, like it started traveling to different parts of India. Like and during that time, Kerala was seeing many film societies coming up in remote parts of Kerala. Like I am from a very small town called Kodamangalam in the district of Ernakulam. So even when I was studying in my college, like we had a film society functioning in the same town, where they allowed us to watch films for free. Like for students, they didn't ask us to take membership, even though it was like a very minimal amount. Like they let us free. So that was the kind of environment like we brought in. So we were not like exposed to the literature, like world of literature, because I would say that like we like I studied in college during 90s 2000, during that time, and that time like we were reading a lot of Latin American literature or Persian translated literature. So like we try to reach as remote as we can. So that was the kind of curiosity during our student days. Like yes, you get exposed to Hollywood films, you can watch European films, but like if you get a chance to watch an Iranian film, if you get a chance to watch a Polish film, if you get a chance to watch a film from Africa, like like that's how like we like satiated our curiosity also in that way. So it gave us that kind of exposure to world cinema also, in that sense. So many people like me like had a dream to join film institute, study there, and make films which could sound something unheard so far in the medium of cinema. So that was the kind of dream we all like shared. And definitely there were challenges also in terms of like the kind of stories you think, like if I put it in a very simple way, like whether it has got any feasibility, any commercial viability, will there be any audience to watch it, all these kind of concerns, anxieties. So in all these situations we grew up. The identification to the medium and to the audience was like more wider in that sense. So that's why Malayalam cinema right now is taking up more challenges in terms of the narrative it represents, the nuances it represents, the stylistic nuances it represents. So that's why I think everybody is looking at Malayalam cinema right now.
Yeah, there is a kind of a paradigm shift from the kind of movies that we've watched and those are coming out now. Um, so with the, let me just come to that, with the OTT phenomenon. Now, how would you look at making movie? Earlier, once the movie is bombed in the box office, you're finished. But now there are avenues, more avenues of making a movie feasible. So as a filmmaker, when you make a movie, is there a distinction between this movie is for the theater and this is for the OTT? I mean, how would you look at that? I mean,
definitely, like when you, as a filmmaker, when you look at it, there are certain kind of important factors that you look at in terms of the platform where you are showing the film. Kerala, like I would say, like because of a certain kind of audience supporting new kind of films, which talks about different untold stories, or a film with a different kind of style. So all these things, once the audience started supporting, so the change was happening. So it is mutual. Like it is the filmmaker pushes his form, his experiment in his medium, but at the same time, once you don't have an audience who support it, then you can't succeed. Everybody fails. Maybe once or twice you may try, then once there is no support. So that's a kind of mileage we also got from Malayalam cinema, and it didn't happen in this decade or last decade. It's a history also. Like from 50s onwards, we can see that there was a stream of films that addressed society with a reformist outlook, vision, agenda. Then people thought that even though we don't even fully understand or fully appreciate the aesthetic part of it, we will go and we will spend 10 rupees or 100 rupees to support that film. So that was the kind of attitude. So that's where we could push the subject also. That's where I could make a film like Pada, which is a film of dissent, because that was the primary reason, because I missed that point when you asked me the genesis of this film, because I wanted to make a film on dissent primarily, when the dissent is the most anti-national word in this context, in Indian present context. So that's where I thought that I'll make a film on dissent, and that's why I landed in this particular incident and the story also. So even when I stylistically, when I wanted to present this film, I thought that again the story is known to everyone, because it had happened already. And but what am I contributing to that story? What am I expressing through that story? So that is what I try to experiment with my audience, which is like a kind of togetherness and conversation. So how do you stand together? How do you converse? Even when you disagree with each other. So that was the kind of experience that I want to create in this film.
Let me go back to the question of OTT. I mean, that's what I asked, but when you make a movie now, you have the option of selling this movie to the OTT platforms. So does it make any difference in the way you tell the story, do you make the story, when you have to deal with the producer or producers, and or is there any change in the approach?
Definitely, like when you have a strong script, when you have a strong urge to talk about something very specific, nobody can interfere, intervene, spoil it. No platform, like nothing can corrupt you. Like even theaters also. Like that is how, like when I was in the process of making this film, like we knew that this is not going to be a commercial film. It is not going to have the so-called popular elements in the film. But like we knew that it had got a kind of quality of a thriller, like in as in a mainstream pitch. Like we can say that okay, we are presenting you a thriller film, and like if you ask me further, I will say a political thriller. So we know that there is a genre. So like you understand the genre, you understand the dynamics, you understand the reach of that genre also, and definitely different platform offers you different kind of audience, because theater gives you an immediate response. Like the spectators, the viewers, the audience there are there with immediate effect, because their response is going to decide the fate of your work also, your film also. So then comes OTT. It's an addition to whatever is existing, other than the satellite or the television platform when you make a film. So no platform can actually decide what you want to make when you have a strong vision, when you have a strong point to make through that medium. Otherwise, like when you make a film like this, OTT platforms gives you confidence also, because you know that, like, suppose if I would have made this film 5 years back, I would have been limited to make this film maybe in 4 crores budget, or not more than 5 crores budget. Because like when you talk about that incident, like the scale of that incident decide the budget of the film. So it is in ratio with what kind of scale, like you posit your story or the event related with your story. So this was like in that sense a big budget film. So, and we knew that like we have like 3 platforms that where we can sell this film. The primarily theater, secondary platform is OTT, and whatever the third platform is satellite television. So we knew that there is a revenue model which is going to work in favor of the film also. So a difficult film like this and non-commercial film like this, which made in around 10 crores budget, we could make it like feasible only because there was a new platform, OTT.
That was I was coming at.
Yeah.
No,
So it gives you that kind of, because like it's not their offering for you. It's like that is something you earn also. Because you know that like when you push a film like this, when you talk about an issue which is still burning all over India in terms of the tribal land rights or generally tribal Adivasi rights, so you know that like the film has got some relevance somewhere, and it will resonate or it will reflect to someone or other. And it may be it's not just the audience that you are looking upon, it might be someone who is the deciding factor in some OTT platform like Amazon Prime. Because like I sent the first cut of the film to Amazon Prime, and like they immediately like bought the film. So it's like there is a certain kind of solidarity or identification that works in our society everywhere. So that's why like I'm hopeful of making more films, because like when you make a relevant film, every platform will support you.
Okay, thanks. And before we, open a bit for questions if there are, let me ask you, what are your opinion? What is your opinion on censorship? As a filmmaker, especially in the political context that we are right now, how do you look at censorship?
When you talk about censorship, you have to talk about sponsorship also. Because we saw the comedy that had happened in IFI this year. The jury chairperson, Nadav Lapid, who is one of the respectable, rebellious figure in world cinema right now. I don't know how this people who runs this festival invites Nadav without understanding him and pushing a film like Kashmir Files in front of him. And like definitely he will see the color of that film. It's quite natural. So that's a kind of sponsorship. And like you go through censorship, because I will tell you my story of censorship. Like when I made ID, there was nothing, conventionally merit that film for an A certificate, adults only certificate. So after watching the film, there is still a ritual kind of formality we follow in censorship, that like the director or the producer has to be present in the censorship screening everywhere in India. So like I was there in Mumbai censorship office after the screening, awaiting for their feedback and response. So they called me, and I remember there were 4 censor board members who were like somehow compassionate to that film, but at the same time angry about that film. And they told me, if I say it in short words, like they told me, हम लोग तो फिल्म अच्छा लगा, बट आप तो हमारा देश को बदनाम कर रहा है. So that was the kind of phrasing they did on behalf of the, even though they liked it, they are afraid that I am defaming the nation. So then like I started arguing with them. So what's nation and like what is defamation? Like no, आप सोच रहे हैं ऐसा अभी स्लमडॉग मिलियनर को ऑस्कर अवार्ड मिला, so इसलिए स्लम में एक फिल्म बनाएगा तो अच्छा हो जाएगा. So then I told them, so it's the issue. So you are ashamed of some other foreigner who comes to your land and makes a film set in slum, and when me from this land makes a story that happens in a slum, you feel ashamed. So they gave me a certificate for that. And for Pada, censorship office, Trivandrum, a different setting, they watched the film, they all liked it. They were like silently raving about that film, but finally the censor officer told me that like we are giving you a UA certificate. Okay. Why? Because it's anti-state. The film is anti-state. Okay. By the time like I have seen censor boards, so I was very happy to see this honest feedback from the censor officer. Okay. So you recognize that? Okay, that's what I meant also. If you give me UA certificate, I don't mind it, because it is not going to disrupt the screening of the film in any platform in India. But like when you get a certificate, like you can only show it in theaters. So a certificate is quite tricky in that sense. So you address censorship in this level. Like, and there are filmmakers who have faced censorship, like in India, in in much more grave level also. But at the same time, we have to see there are certain kind of films get sponsorship also. A film like Kashmir Files or any films like that's where like you see the Bollywood has gone to I don't know what level because it had a great tradition. It had great tradition of cinema of Guru Dutt or like even before that Raj Kapoor too. Like where our film has reached out to different other nations also in that sense. Like I have attended many international films and I have walked around different countries in Africa, Europe, or like Asian countries. Like one thing I felt is like common is like once they see you, they recognize you with your culture and tradition of cinema also. Like if you walk in the bazaar or the city of old city in Marrakesh, they will invite you for a inside their shop and offer you a tea and a Bollywood song or like a song from Raj Kapoor film or Guru Dutt film. So it's that kind of connections Bollywood had like created all over the world, and this is what like through state sponsorship, this is what like the film industry is like reflecting right now. So we have to see all these shades that is happening inside our country.
Thank you, Kamal.
Thank you, thank you.